The conversion of a building from one use to another use is called adaptive reuse. There are a lot of benefits to the adaptive reuse process. The most obvious one being is you're preserving a beautiful historic building like London House. There are also benefits to the environment. Because a building isn't being demolished, construction debris isn't being added to a landfill. Because a new building isn't being constructed, energy isn't being used. The greenhouse gases aren't being created through the production of construction material like steel and concrete. So we turned off the mist machine now, so it's a nice, cool day for you. So now we are going under the DuSable Bridge that I mentioned. It's a double-decker bridge, carries automobile traffic on both levels. And this is Michigan Avenue. So Fort Dearborn would have been located right along the shoreline here. So the bridge, DuSable Bridge, was originally called the Michigan Avenue Bridge, but it was most recently renamed the DuSable Bridge, named after Jean-Baptiste Point DuSable, that first non-native settler here in Chicago. So let's take a look over on the left side of the boat again. And off in the distance, you'll see another tan limestone clad Beaux-Art building. This is 35 East Wacker. 35 East Wacker was completed in 1926, and it was designed by Yaver and Dinkelberg. It's got those beautiful ornamental domes on top, the large dome on the top and then those smaller domes in the corners of the base. The building was originally designed to be a first-class office building, and when it opened, it had a restaurant and a lounge up on top of that tower with an observation deck that provided beautiful 360-degree views of the Chicago skyline. So when the building originally opened, it was marketed as the Jewelers Building, referencing the developer's target tenant market of jewelry-related tenants. In order to appeal to this jewelry-related tenancy, the developer built a unique car elevator system that could deliver the jewelers and their cars and their jewels from the street level all the way up to any of the first 28 floors of the building. Despite this unique security offering, jewelers never really gravitated to the building, and those car elevators became obsolete, and they're eventually converted into office space. That is its current use. It was recently sold, and fingers are crossed, maybe like a lot of these older office buildings, maybe they'll convert it into residential or hotel. I'll talk more about that later. All right, coming up on the right side of the boat, you're going to see these corncob-shaped towers. These towers are part of the Marina City mixed-use development. Marina City was completed in 1967, and it was designed by Bertrand Goldberg. When Goldberg was designing the Marina City development, there was a trend of people leaving the city to move out to the suburbs. Goldberg really wanted to help reverse that trend. So with Marina City, he was trying to create a city within a city, providing the renters who occupy the upper portions of those towers with many of the things they would need on a daily basis. So he included an office building so they could walk to work. There's a movie theater. There's a bowling alley, retail space, restaurant space, a skating rink, parking, and of course a marina. So a lot of people think that these towers look like corn cobs. I do too. Those balconies, I think, look like corn kernels. But according to Goldberg, his design inspiration for the towers was not corn cobs. He felt that the design inspiration was trees. He thought that the core of the building represented the tree trunks, and the dwelling units that extended out from the core would be the tree limbs, and those beautiful balconies were the tree leaves. All right, let's switch over to the left side of the boat. Let's take a look at that building that's got the triangular roof with that modern glass facade and that light gray granite trim. That is 77 West Wacker. 77 West Wacker was completed in 1992, and it was designed by Ricardo Blofeld. 77 West Wacker is a great example of the postmodern style of architecture. A phrase often associated with the modernist style of architecture is less is more. Well, postmodern architects did not think less is more. They thought less was a bore. And they brought back ornamentation and some wit to their designs. They often incorporated modern interpretations of classical styles of the past. And 77 West Wacker definitely does that. It combines that beautiful modern glass facade with that light gray granite trim, along with that triangular roof, give the building a feel of a modern Greek temple. All right, staying on the left side of the boat, in the distance, you're going to see a tan limestone clad building just beyond the bridge that has like a throne shape. This is the LaSalle Wacker building. The LaSalle Wacker building was completed in 1930 and it was designed by Halliburton and Root. The LaSalle Wacker building is a great example of the Art Deco style of architecture. If you take a look at those vertical areas in between the windows, those are called piers. And notice how those piers run continuously up and down the building to help express the building's tallness or verticality, which is a common attribute for Art Deco skyscrapers. Let's talk about that throne shape. That throne shape is a common attribute for Art Deco skyscrapers located in Chicago. As skyscraper technology progressed, buildings got taller and taller. People started to worry that these tall buildings would block all the natural light coming down to the street level. So in order to address this concern, in 1923, the city of Chicago enacted a zoning ordinance which required buildings above a certain height to have those setbacks. They have their tower setback, which would allow light to get around the tower and also cast less of a shadow. And I'll talk more about this later, but those setbacks really make the building a good candidate for conversion to other uses like residential and hotel, which is very valuable these days when the office market is suffering. So along the left side of the boat, you see the beautiful Riverwalk. I'm sure I know all of you have walked along the river, right? The Riverwalk to get onto the boat. So the Riverwalk was completed in 2016, and it was designed by Ross Barney Architects, which is led by Carol Ross Barney. The Riverwalk extends about 1.25 miles or 2 kilometers from the lakefront on the east all the way west to where the three branches of the Chicago River meet. The fancy word for that is called the confluence, and you'll hear me mention the term the confluence a lot. Again, it's just a fancy term for where the main stem of Huron right now meet with the north branch of the river, where we're going next, and the south branch of the river. All right, on the left side of the boat, look ahead, you'll see a building that looks like it's got two antennas or two toothpicks coming out of it. That is 225 West Wacker. 225 West Wacker was designed by KPF, and it is an example of a postmodern building. Postmodern buildings often pay tribute to their surroundings, their neighborhood. And a fancy word for that is called contextualism. And 225 West Wacker definitely has some forms of contextualism. If you take a look in between those areas with the you see a structure that looks a lot like the bridges that we're passing under. That is a direct tribute to all of the bridges along the Chicago River. By the way, we're going to be passing under 25 different bridges during our tour today. Sure. Let's talk about the building right next door to 225 West Wacker. That building with the green curved glass. That is 333 West Wacker. It was completed in 1989, and it was also designed by KPF. And it's also an example of a postmodern building. It's our beautiful L that you hear. That green curved glass really echoes the color of the river and the bend of the river where the building is located. And that beautiful mirrored glass really provides a nice reflection of the river and the surrounding buildings, all examples of contextualism. So the Riverwalk, there are themes in between each bridge, and the theme that we're coming up on now is called the confluence, in honor of the confluence. A lot of great views along the confluence, so have your cameras ready. I know it's a little bit cloudy, but it provides some interesting character to your pictures. But this area is called the confluence. You see the beautiful chairs where you can sit back and enjoy the beautiful view. So straight ahead of the boat, you're going to see a building with an arch on the top. And as we get closer to the building, you'll see it has an arch on the bottom and a beautiful red sculpture in front of it. That is the Riverfront office building. It was completed in 2017, and it was designed by Picard Chilton. So the Riverpoint office building is named for its location at the three branches of the Chicago River. The building, and there's a beautiful riverfront plaza along it, are all built over active railroad tracks, using a concept called air rights, which I'll explain a little bit more later. But you see the round portholes along the riverside. those are actually exhaust ports. You see the fans spinning around because those are active train lines. So train smoke builds up, so they got to exhaust that space up. So now boat is going to turn right, and we are going to go north on the north branch of the river. But you doing all right? Thanks for joining me on this misty day. So off on the right side of the boat is the area that we call Wolf Point. And in early Chicago, there are actually quite a few buildings. There are several taverns. There's a famous tavern located on Wolf Point called Miller's Tavern. So I mentioned at the beginning of the tour, one of the themes of this tour is I want you all to get a better understanding of some of the things that influence the designs of the buildings on the street. So 150 North Riverside is a great example of how site constraints and building construction technology influence design. Hello, everybody. All right, I'm going to stick with this wide thing for one more building. Let's focus on the left side of the boat. Just beyond the next bridge, we're going to come up on a building that has Y-shaped columns along the riverside. This is the Bank of America Tower. Bank of America Tower was completed in 2020, and it was also designed by Getch Partners. The Bank of America Tower has a unique angled side along the river. And Getch Partners, they did a really great job of taking advantage of that angle side along the river. Take a look at how they created those stair-step setbacks that provide the building with 14 very valuable corner offices on each floor. Everyone loves a corner office, right? And let's take a look at the riverside. Those Y-shaped, or we can call them trident-shaped columns. Really, they reduce the number of straight columns that come along the river, which really opens up and gives that river walk a very spacious feel. Are there any music fans on board? I'm a big music fan. All right. The next building we're going to look at on the left side of the boat may be of special interest to you. It is the Civic Opera Building. Civic Opera Building was completed in 1929, and it was designed by Graham, Anderson, Probst, and White. The Civic Opera Building has a massive auditorium that is primarily used by the Lyric Opera of Chicago. The upper floors of the building are used as office space. So the Civic Opera Building opened just days after the stock market crash in 1929, and the opera closed during the Depression, and the building went into receivership. Came back to life in the 1950s, and the opera theater has been built. When I say express structure, I mean when you look at the building, you can really tell its main structural components. So Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill were very, very busy during the late 1900s, particularly on this stretch of the river. They designed the next two buildings on the right side of the boat. The white concrete building, which is called Gateway Plaza 3, now known as the Fifth Third Center, and this unique black box building is with the X bracing on the side. That X bracing allowed the floors on that building to be column free, which was very important because those floors were originally the trading floors for the Chicago Mercantile Exchange before they moved to 1030 South Wacker. So how do you get your building on a map? You put a map on your building. Remember when I said I'd show you an aerial view of the confluence of the river? Well, here it is in the form of a mural map on 300 South Wacker on the left side of the boat. As we get through the bridge, you will see the red "You Are Here" marker. And right above that red "You Are Here" marker, you will see the confluence of the river. So 300 South Wacker was a relatively nondescript modernist building, but it added some bling in 2014 when they put this beautiful mural map on the building. It's really gotten the building some new attention, and it's added some nice public art to the river. All right, on the right side of the boat, you're going to see a beautiful tan limestone clad Art Deco building. This is the old post office. The old post office was built in stages in 1921 and 1934. When the old post office opened, it was the world's largest post office. And we know why Chicago needed the world's largest post office, right? It's because Chicago was the mail order capital of the world back in the early 1900s. The old post office had to handle a lot of mail. The old post office sent and received mail via train, truck, and even helicopter. There was a helicopter landing pad on top of the building. As suggested by the 1909 plan of Chicago, there are 6 lanes of Interstate 290 traffic running through the middle of the base of the building. It's going to get a little bit noisy when we go under that traffic. So a new post office with setbacks on the Willis Tower. So maybe, even though 311 is trying to be very, very different from the Willis Tower, maybe it is as a postmodern building, maybe it has a little contextualism and is paying some tribute to its very famous
Tower, Willis Tower.
All right, on the left side of the boat, we have this beautiful building with the green curved glass. This is 300 South Riverside. 300 South Riverside was designed by, of course, Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill. And it is another postmodern building that also has this contextualism. Again, tribute to its surroundings. Take a look at how the building's beautiful green curved glass really echo the color of the river and the bend of the river where it's located. And the building has some unique glass too. It really provides a shimmering reflection of the river and the surrounding buildings. All examples of contextualism. So Chicago is considered to be the railroad capital of the United States. The railroads have been very, very good to Chicago. But those train tracks, they take up a lot of space. And the land that the train tracks sit on is very valuable land, particularly here in downtown Chicago. So Chicago needed to figure out a way to build above these railroad tracks, and they did, as you can see. All of the buildings along the left side of the boat on this stretch of the river are built over active railroad tracks, using the concept called air rights. So with air rights, a landowner, in this case the railroads, maintains ownership of the ground floor space, but then they lease or sell the airspace above the railroad tracks. So in order to build above those railroad tracks, developers build these reinforced concrete platforms that support the buildings. And those concrete platforms are supported by caissons. Caissons are basically cylinders made out of reinforced concrete and steel. Those caissons are sunk in between the railroad tracks. They're sunk deep down into the ground, all the way down to the hard bedrock. In Chicago, we have about 80 feet of single antenna on top of that peacock logo below the antenna. This is NBC Tower. NBC Tower was completed in 1989, and it was designed by Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill. The building might look familiar to some of you. It has a very strong resemblance to 30 Rockefeller Plaza in New York City. 30 Rock was designed by Raymond Hood, who also designed the Tribune Tower. The NBC Tower has another connection with the Tribune Tower. Take a look at those elbow-shaped structures. Those are called flying buttresses. And they are a direct tribute to the flying buttresses on the top of the Tribune Tower. Very common element in Gothic architecture. All right, let's switch over to the right side of the boat. And just beyond the bridge, you're going to see a glass-clad building. This is Swiss Hotel on top. This is the Swiss Hotel building. As we get closer, you'll notice that the building has a triangular shape. You remember that triangular shaped building we saw on the north branch of the river cottages, those 4 townhomes. Well, the river cottages were designed by the same triangle-loving architect who designed the Swiss Hotel, Harry Weiss. Harry Weiss really loves triangle shapes. There's several buildings in downtown Chicago designed by Harry Weiss that have these triangle shapes. So as we get through the next bridge, please look off on the right side of the boat, just beyond the Swiss Hotel. You will see the 3 blue glass interconnected towers of varying height. This is St. Regis Chicago. St. Regis Chicago was completed in 2020, and it was designed by Studio Gang, which is led by renowned Chicago-based architect Jeannie Gang. St. Regis Chicago is the 3rd tallest building in Chicago, and it's comprised of luxury, hotel, and condominium space. So the towers on St. Regis look very curved, but as we get closer, you will see there is no curved glass on St. Regis. That curved shape is created by alternating the width of the floor plates by just a bit, just 5 inches. You'll see as we get close how they do that. That blue glass is actually very energy efficient too. Notice how the darker colored glass covers the smaller floor plates, which inhibits the amount of heat gain into those shallow floor plates, whereas the larger floor plates have the lighter colored left, which allows more natural light to get into those deeper floor plates. So St. Regis is located is part of the Lakeshore East neighborhood, which is a relatively new neighborhood, which is primarily comprised of residential skyscrapers. There's a very beautiful park in the middle of Lakeshore East, and you can access that park right from the Riverwalk. You'll see a gap in the fence along the Riverwalk. There's a walkway right there where you'll walk right through the middle of St. Regis to get right into that park. All right, look, the multi-level Wacker Drive in the 1920s. And all of you experienced the multi-levels of Wacker Drive as you walk down to the dock. You walk down the stairs. Some of you have also probably seen Lower Wacker Drive in the movies. There's a lot of famous car chase scenes filmed in Lower Wacker Drive. Old school movie, Blues Brothers. They had a great car chase scene in there. A little bit newer, The Dark Knight. Some people are also familiar with those lower levels of Wacker Drive. If you had to go